All right, I guess we will get started. There will probably be a few other people entering as we go. Welcome everyone to the Technical Advisory Committee for the County of Sonoma. We will start as usual with introductions. I'll start on my left.
Tyree, Sonoma County Regional Parks.
Elissa Overton, City of Sebastopol.
Greg Scott, City of Cotati.
Hunter McLaughlin, Sonoma County Public Infrastructure.
Brendan Barrett, Town of Windsor.
Derek Montani, City of Cloverdale.
Giovanna Quezada with Sonoma County Public Infrastructure.
Stephen Hunter from Sonoma County Public Infrastructure.
Shauna Gause with the Sonoma County Transportation and Climate Authorities.
Larry Zimmerman, the City of Healdsburg, and online.
I'm Lori Enrocchioli, and I'm with Sonoma County Public Infrastructure's new ATP team.
Mike Berger with the City of Sonoma.
Jeff Stutzman, City of Petaluma.
Steve Urbanik, Sonoma County.
I think that's everyone. I don't know, in the back of the room, you want to shout out real quick?
Adam Garcia, SCTCA.
Margot Cañas, SCTCA. Seth Britt, SCTCA. Dana Trey, SCTCA.
Chris Barney, SCTCA. Mark Collins, City of Sebastopol. Brandon Nichols, SCTCA, and Tarina Wilson from the City of Santa Rosa just walked in.
All right, and I'm better at saying SCTCA than you guys are. All right. Thank you, everyone. And public comment. I'm not necessarily seeing anyone online, but opportunity. For those who are online, feel free to raise your hand or jump in as appropriate. All right, item number 3, approval of the meeting minutes from January 23rd and February 27th. Does anyone have any additions, corrections, comments? Seeing none, we will assume that passes unanimously. Item number 4, Sonoma County Vehicle Miles Traveled Mitigation Program Update. Chris?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I'll get on the mic here and let me get some slides up. So just wanted to provide a quick update on the Sonoma County Vehicle Miles Traveled Mitigation Program. So we've made a decent amount of progress. So just wanted to keep you all in the loop of where we're at. So let me go ahead and get this up and get the slideshow going. So we kicked this off last year. We've been able to fund this project through a Caltrans Sustainable Communities grant, and we were able to hire Fair and Peers to help us with this project. So the goal is to develop a vehicle miles traveled reduction program focused on development projects in Sonoma County. And so we've been active in SB 743 implementation, the shift from level of service analysis and CEQA to VMT analysis, and providing support in that area, including helping with setting VMT thresholds, calculating VMT, and developing a VMT mitigation calculator that could be used at the individual project level. So we've made it through all of that, but we've been hearing back there's still a need to be able to mitigate VMT impacts off-site. So we put together the scope, we're able to get some funding and are working on coming up with some way of providing off-site mitigation. So we started out investigating a few different setups for doing that, including a banking system, an exchange, or a fee program. So we've worked with the project TAC and a few stakeholders to figure out what the preferred types of VMT mitigation options would be, including capital improvements, services like bike share, or programs like free transit. And based on the preferences and the list of ideas we started coming up with, it was really pointing to an exchange type program. So the way that works is a project sponsor with a VMT, with a project with VMT impacts would calculate those impacts, figure out would figure out how many impacts they have. And then we'd have a list or menu of options that the project sponsor could use to offset those VMT impacts. And they would work together to fund those improvements. So the administrator would, number one, help develop that menu of options and serve as a kind of matchmaker between the project with the VMT impacts and the project sponsor that's providing the VMT mitigations. So there's still some work to be done to kind of work out exactly how that would work. We're actually going to be moving into a demonstration and pilot phase this summer where we're going to be taking some sample projects through a few different, administrative processes to see how that would work. So there'll be more on that soon, but just wanted to provide an update on where we're at now. So in working with the TAC and a few project sponsors, we've determined when a project comes in and it's determined it's going to have VMT impacts, there'll be kind of a decision point at that point that'll be made at the local level. You could work with the project sponsor to apply project level mitigations, including bike racks, TDM programs at that project level. So that's something that the individual jurisdiction would need to work out with the developer of the housing project or whatever project. You could have a community type program or community measures that you would develop at your each individual agency, and having talked with the TAC, there's a lot of interest in bicycle pedestrian programs that may be, a good way to go for these community or jurisdiction level VMT reductions. If you get through that and you determine that there needs to be more offsite mitigations, maybe outside of your jurisdictions, that's where this program would kick in. So we came up with a list of 30 to 40 different VMT reducing ideas, including different projects, programs, and VMT reducing items. So in working with our legal counsel, there's a desire to move away from calling things projects and more calling them VMT reducing items or approaches. So we're working through some of that with them. But, we have this list of 40 or so ideas for reducing VMT offsite, and we were able to cool those down using the methodologies here. So number one, you need to be able to quantify the VMT reduction benefit that each of these approaches would be able to provide. Number two, it has to be permanent. It can't just be like a little blip and then things go back to the way they are. So that would be included in the monitoring over time. A big issue is additionality in CEQA, and basically what that means is the VMT mitigation needs to not already have lined up funding. So there's the whole but-for argument in CEQA. This project would not happen but for the mitigation. So our legal counsel is very laser focused on this requirement right here. You couldn't have a project that already has some associated funding. You'd receive VMT credits to offset those funding and move it somewhere else. The legal counsel definitely does not, that's not okay under CEQA. So that's something that we're looking at as part of these as well. The VMT reducers need to be effective at a countywide scale. They need to be cost effective. They need to actually provide a VMT benefit. And we've also looked at equity priority community benefits as well as part of the criteria. So this is where we've kind of filtered things down to as far as what we're going to analyze next. So on the capital improvement side, we've selected affordable housing subsidies as something to analyze going forward. And this is based on the effectiveness of reducing VMT, cost effectiveness, and those other criteria I just went through. On the service provision side, it's primarily focused on transit, either expanding the coverage, so where the buses go, the frequency or how often the buses show up, or the transit network hours, so running the buses earlier in the day or later in the day. And then on the programmatic side, we'll be analyzing e-bike rebate programs, micromobility programs, really focused on bike share. And some of the TDM ideas that we have that we're considering as part of the TDM plan that we're developing right now, along with fair, free, and lower cost transit past programs. So our next steps, we're almost all the way through our stakeholder outreach phase of the project. So we've met with housing experts, a local government, and a few other stakeholders as part of the project, and interviewed a number of people to get their ideas on, the list of different project ideas that we're going to be analyzing next, how feasible it would be to, say, provide subsidies for affordable housing, and then get some ideas in actual administration. We'll be moving into the evaluation phase next and quantification phase, where we take a few project ideas and start calculating the VMT reduction effectiveness for all of those things that are on the previous slide, and how much revenue could be generated to implement some of those transit fare free programs, transit improvements, affordable housing subsidies, things like that. So after we get through the quantification, we'll be coming up with a few example projects that would have VMT impacts, walk them through administratively how this would work, and then see where things break down and where we need to, figure out issues along the way, and then report out on that. And then based on our work on the evaluation and the demonstration phase, we'll work on developing draft and final recommendations for what a program could look like in Sonoma County, including who would be the administering agency, and what types of projects we can include in the program starting out. That being said, this would be a starting point. So I'll go back to the list of these things right here. This is what we'll be evaluating soon. Some things may rise to the top, some things may show up as less effective. This is meant to be a living system, so VMT reducing approaches could be added over time. They could be added to the system, and we could eventually move towards a banking system as well. But right now, we're really moving towards recommendations for an exchange program. So that's where we're at right now. We'll be getting the project TAC together sometime in the next couple months. I know a lot of you are involved in that, so we'll have more detail available on all these steps at the next project TAC. But just wanted to make sure that this TAC is aware of what's going on as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and wrap up and see if there are any questions, comments, ideas.
Hey, Chris, can you just real quickly go over the affordable housing nexus versus like the transit-oriented development for VMT reduction? I'm trying to get that connection in my head here a little bit.
Yeah, based on the current research, affordable housing has a pretty strong ability to reduce VMT. So that's why we'll be looking at that. And, the affordable housing, depending on where it would be located, would be more or less effective. So, I think in most cases that would be focused in traditional transit-oriented development areas. So around smart stations and high-frequency bus stops.
Thanks.
Yeah, before we get to that, a follow-up on Steve's comment. So for affordable housing, how does that work with your comment on CEQA and not needing to be, pre-funded? Because obviously this mitigation isn't going to completely fund affordable housing.
Yeah, we've talked a lot with housing experts on that, including Burbank Housing, the Renewable Enterprise District, on how that would work. So it'd have to be on a unit by unit basis, or we'd have to demonstrate that the project would not happen without this additional seed funding. And we wouldn't intend the VMT mitigation to completely fund an entire project, but maybe add on a number of additional units or demonstrate it wouldn't, be happening in a certain time frame without the mitigation. So definitely something we need to work through with the housing developers and our legal counsel on whether or not that would fly.
That sounds difficult.
Yeah.
Joanne?
Thank you. Just on the services, I don't know how you're interpreting implementing agency, but I would add or district to those three transit service categories. And then on the transit pass subsidies, low cost transit pass, So I know you all just heard from the Bay Pass folks at your Citizens Committee on Monday and from the Santa Rosa Junior College. The Bay Pass program that just wrapped up the pilot program is ending, so there are no more passes being offered to students at the Santa Rosa Junior College. And they found in that study that there was a 30% increase in rides on all systems for Bay Pass holders, even if they were already transit riders. So I think it's pretty effective. We didn't talk about this on Monday, but SMART is making every effort to find funding through a jobs program, a statewide jobs program, to offer Bay Pass to every college student, every public college student in Marin and Sonoma County. So that'd be College of Marin, Santa Rosa Junior College, and Sonoma State. And the crazy thing is, like, for all of that access, it boils down to $3.33 per student per month. So, you know, at a global level, it may be a larger number, but per individual, it's really very, very tiny. So I would encourage you to wrap that program up in terms of understanding the actual VMT reduction efficacy. It has to do with trips. 22% of the JC trips were on SMART. And if our average trip length is 22 miles, that's actually some pretty big mileage reduction. I think it just needs to be like looked at with the most recent information. And I would encourage you to really look at this as a real economic investment in the county and in getting VMT reduction. So that's my pitch.
Yeah, thanks, Joanne. We'll definitely point them towards some local information. So a lot of the quantification that'll be done will be looking at CAP-COA formulas that are compiled at the state level. So it'll be useful to have some actual local numbers as well. And, you know, one thing that I omitted as part of the presentation is scalability is important here as well, because there will be small and large projects that may need VMT mitigation. So some of these things, a small project with, you know, 15 units or 20 units wouldn't be able to implement some of these things, but something small like fare subsidy programs may be able to be implemented at that smaller scale. So there's a need for large VMT mitigation things on this list and small things as well.
Great. Any other questions?
I did have a question. But this comes from Rob, actually. It's his question. He wanted to know when we might expect that the VMT maps might be updated. I know it's not part of this process, but do you have a...
So that is dependent on the update for our travel model. So we've recently updated our 2023 land use, but we'd like to revalidate the travel model before updating the VMT maps. So we're hoping to get a project focused on validating the model going this summer, but it would probably be a year at least away from them. So I'd estimate next summer, 2026 at the earliest. Yep.
Anything else? Seeing none. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Thanks.
On to item 5, the countywide safe routes to school plan prioritization. Margot.
I am Margot. Good afternoon. I'm actually gonna look like a game show host. Is that, I'm gonna stand and present.
Like a TED Talk.
Yeah. Ready, get set, go. So it's interesting listening to the previous conversation about VMT and SMART's input, and I'm kind of thinking my aspirations for safe routes to school is to switch all those people out of their single occupancy cars in morning and afternoon and get them walking and biking. So maybe this is a VMT youth-oriented presentation. Well, good afternoon. I do see some familiar faces online and in the room, so I apologize. You've seen this pitch before. I'll try to mix it up a little bit, but again, Margot Okanya is the lead for the Countywide Safe Routes to School plan, and wanted to give you a quick overview of the project, which launched earlier this year, and also solicit some of your input on a prioritization approach that we're using. Yes, we struggle. We are SCTA. Our vision is now combined transportation and climate protection. Next slide. Many of you may be familiar with Safe Routes to School. It really is a combination of non-infrastructure and infrastructure activities and programs. Next slide, please. Our area of to date where we focus a lot of our attention is on the non-infrastructure side. SCTA does fund Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition. Christina Panza has done a great job of building relationships with a subset of the county schools. The focus of her work, next slide, has been programs that you're probably familiar with: Walk to School, Bike to School Day, Bike Everywhere, or I think it's everywhere. They've also been really critical in some data collection. So you'll see up here, there's some travel mode data, which is conducted through a very simple hand-raising exercise in the classroom where students are calling out or letting the educator know how they travel to school and how they leave school. To date, Christina's team has also been great about collecting street address information from the enrolled students. Why is this important? One, on the travel mode data, it's helpful for us to understand really what are the primary modes so that we can design accordingly, or helps us identify the opportunities. It also serves as a baseline. If we're collecting this at the beginning of a project, over time, we'd love to see that mode shift. The GIS mapping is kind of a quick way for us to identify those routes that may be most critical. Understandably, families move, kids grow up, they get out of the house, so there is some shifting, but it is helpful conversation data to bring into the conversations with the parent community. So all really great work that we've been funding to date, and now through, next slide, a Safe Streets and Roads for All SS4A that we secured for fiscal year 23, we are now expanding and building out a whole new wing of Safe Routes to School into the infrastructure side. Some of you may be familiar that Christina has hosted what's sort of in the pale box there, the site assessments. So she has met with school communities, solicited their input about what makes it challenging to walk and bicycle, what are the obstacles in the way. The challenge has been to move from site assessment community gathering to actually manifesting it into a really solid infrastructure improvement plan that is watertight as far as feasibility and costed out so that we can then pivot and drop it into applications to secure funding. So that's really the goal of the program. Next slide. In the two layers, we have a county-wide level and we have a City of Healdsburg focus. At the county-wide level, we're zeroing in on refining the school universe right now. Understandably, it's kind of a dynamic space. Schools are closing and opening. So we are connecting with all 40 superintendents in the county to ensure that we have the correct list of operating schools. And under that county-wide umbrella, and I'll walk through the prioritization, we'll be working with the top 10 or 15 schools and building out infrastructure improvement plans in addition to program recommendations for those top 10 or 15 schools. In the City of Healdsburg, we are actually doing the site assessments and the infrastructure plan with all 6 schools. Why are we doing this? A couple of key goals that we hope to meet through this process is we would like to be in a more proactive place as opposed to a reactive place. So I'll walk through the prioritization, which in essence, hopefully will be our roadmap, our blueprint as to where we're going to direct our Safe Routes to School resources, both from a staff capacity perspective and tapping funding. I think there's also an opportunity we want to be more competitive with these infrastructure plans. I have come some time ago now from a city that was a very large disadvantaged community, and it was really great to be in that position and submitting for grant funds. That's not always the case here. So thinking about how to sculpt those IIPs, infrastructure improvement plans, really robustly. Perhaps it's bundling a set of schools that ultimately help develop a network. These Safe Routes to School plans can also help to build out active transportation plans or other long-range adopted plans in the jurisdictions. So we do want to be more competitive. The other variable is really trying to bring together or enhance the partnering with the district and school sides. Christina of Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition has done a great job of developing those local school relationships. We are now looking to build those relationships at the superintendent level in many ways, so they're better understanding of the activities that we're doing at the local school. But as we frame these projects, kind of in the spirit of competitiveness, we'd like them to understand or help us understand how the work that we're doing in the public space outside of their schools, regard to safety, travel mode, physical health, air quality, perhaps we can actually help them meet some of their high-level goals or adopted plans, just like we're seeking to help implement active transportation plans. So if we can learn to speak in their speak, they can view us more as a partner who's there to support them and not just one more person that's knocking at their door to ask another thing for them to do. And then lastly, it's sort of probably obvious, but how to develop those new partnerships. Again, Christina is a one-man show at this point. I'm sort of a one-man show, but I have the consultant help. How do we develop those relationships and expand them beyond the ones that she's working with at this point? Next slide. So that brings me to prioritization. As I mentioned, we would like a roadmap that really rank orders schools of most need. Right now, as we are having those conversations with the superintendents and they're finalizing the existing schools, we're probably in the ballpark about 220 schools. That's a lot to cover, so we need to be smart about where we're focusing our attention. So the idea is to develop a prioritization methodology developed using these different indicators. And in the spirit of our organization being a combination of both mobility and transportation and climate protection, you'll see we have a set of indicators that sort of run the gamut from active mobility comfort to safety to student health, climate adaptiveness, and equity. So what you'll see on the left is the indicator name, and then the right is the data source that we are proposing to use. The idea, again, is not to get too fancy schmancy with the data that we have to seek and source and cut and slice, because over time, the prioritization may inevitably need to be refreshed. So finding those sources that are pretty steady and predictable. Next slide. So to break it down a little bit, the way that we're proposing to do this is that for a handful of these indicators is actually to draw a 1/4 mile buffer around the proposed school and then collect that select data. So for example, in that first one, active mobility use vulnerability, what are the KSIs that have happened in that 1/4 mile buffer area? Again, all ages, all days of the week, even though it's a school-centric project, our goal is to enhance the comfort and attractiveness of those streets regardless of age. We have grandparents, we have family members, et cetera, who use them as well. The next one is, I've used this in the past, which is looking at the density of students who live in the 1/4 mile of the school. It would make sense that a school that has a very high density of students that live within that, what we'll call a walking catchment area, 1/4 mile is pretty easy amount of distance to cover with a young one. If you have an area that has a high density of people in that area and of crashes, that sort of helps move it to the top. I will be highly transparent that we are learning with the county. Obviously, you've got a rural and an urban context. So there may be some reconsideration of this as an indicator, because many of the rural schools, as we're hearing from the superintendents and principals, is 99.3% of their students are traveling 3 miles and there are no sidewalks, and the likelihood, even if we built the most beautiful sidewalk, they're probably not going to be walking. So again, having the access to and the conversation with those superintendents is very enlightening for our team to consider. So this may or may not remain as an indicator. So I do have the consultant team coming back with some recommendations should all the schools not be able to pony up street addresses. The others are relatively straightforward. We want to take into consideration your HIN if you have one, if there's some miles or feet of that are within that catchment area. And then level of stress, next slide. Student health, looking at some of the climate adaptive indices. And then for equity, I guess sort of the norm is using the free and reduced priced meal. That's again, a very standard source, it's predictable, et cetera. So those are the indicators. I can jump into sort of the process of once we work this with the school, what we're doing, but just can open up now if anybody has any questions, concerns, or clarification about the prioritization itself. Yes.
Would we see future funding coming down the line that's going to leverage this list that you guys are putting together with the hierarchies of the school's needs level?
Yes, and hopefully I answer your question correctly. I really would like to evolve kind of a turnkey process where we come to, I want to develop a ranked order list in the spirit of being transparent, and that it's a roadmap that's sort of county-wide we can all be comfortable with, including the superintendents. That will inform sort of where we line up our resources to go meet with the school community, get the engineering work scoped out, develop projects, and have them feasible infrastructure plans in a relatively short order so that we are then pivoting and dropping them into application windows that are open. So we'll be looking down the road as to what those funding sources are and when we anticipate them opening, and try to take advantage of them. Because it takes about minimum 8 months to put a really good infrastructure project together that can win some infrastructure funds. So we'll be balancing, scheduling, engaging with schools with the windows for the applications. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Do you want to try again?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Wasn't sure whether I got it, so. But maybe this will help. This is sort of, I'll walk through the process of how we are trying to get ready for those windows. So the first part, again, some of you have probably, I think I know, have participated in what we call the site assessment. So it's a combination of walking the neighborhood, maybe 30 minutes. It's really, the objective is to be listening for our team, the engineers from both the city and our consultant side, local police, principals, parents. In middle and high school, we do a lot of work with the students themselves, but these site assessments are our opportunity to listen where the challenges and problems are. And it is really important and helpful to have, whether it's public infrastructure, transportation, whatever the right title is, to have them involved in listening from the get-go, so that when we kind of return to our offices and brainstorm on the treatments, they're kind of sort of feeling the project from the beginning. So that takes about an hour and a half. We like to have the participants huddle around these larger maps, scratch out their obstacles as well as the routes, because this also is a way of trickling up which are those routes that are actually preferred for use. Next slide. Wow, that seems out of order. Okay, next one. There we go. So we've done our listening. We recognize what the problems are. We have a toolbox. Many of these treatments look familiar to you. Again, in the spirit of being SCTA, we are looking to see how we might evolve some of these components to also be greening, shading, green infrastructure components as well. And then next slide, we translate that into the IIP, the Infrastructure Improvement Plan. So pretty robust selection of treatments in the legend. Where are they actually going? Next slide. And as I mentioned before, we actually, in the maps that we include during the workshopping, we will include the active transportation plan networks if they exist within the school zone. So again, while we're listening to the school community about what their concerns are and the routes that they travel, they may in fact travel across something has been identified in the ATP, and we can actually, through our planning process, help to build that out. Next slide. So here's the schedule. Again, had the opportunity to meet with the 40 superintendents earlier in March and start that relationship building. We hope to have the prioritization, as in the rank ordering of those schools, completed by the end of the school year, April, ideally. And then we're running those, we'll start with the site assessments and then move into plan development. So site assessments in Healdsburg are set for the week of April 14th. We'll be meeting with the 6 schools. Pretty excited. We spoke with, for example, Healdsburg Junior High School yesterday, and our team will be, knowing that they're quite independent travelers in the junior high school, we are actually running 2 workshops with the kids, one a group of 30 and another a group of 75. So pretty excited about getting all that input from the kids that are actually out there using the streets and identifying their routes and the challenges and all the rest of that. So as a mother who's used to handling 2 kids, I am gearing up to handle 75. So it should be fun. So the assessments then lead into the infrastructure plan development, cost estimates, and then when we're wrapping up the project, as you can see, 2 different timelines by sort of the end of calendar year. This year, we hope to have all the plans for Healdsburg, and then about 1.5 years later, all the plans for the county. Again, either 10 to 15 plans for those top ranked schools countywide. Next slide. And if this was so titillating and you want more information, there's a Safe Routes to School fact sheet ready and available for you. So with that, I will wrap and take any questions. I've answered all your questions. Amazing. Okay.
Okay, no questions online or in the room?
I've got one.
Yeah,
Hey,
please.
Margot, real quick, do you guys have some sites where all these infrastructure plans have been implemented and you're still not getting a reduction? I mean, is there a admitted grandfather parent, right? And don't want to see my kids walk around, even on sidewalks sometimes, when they're of certain ages. Is there kind of a bifurcation of kids that you're finding when you're visiting with superintendents about, if you build this stuff, they will use it? And if you build this stuff, I'm still gonna drive my SUV with my Starbucks and wait in line in front of the school and, cause all kinds of traffic problems.
Great question. I'm going to reframe your question a little bit, and some of you may be smiling because I got a similar type question, which is when I presented this to the CB still getting those acronyms down. We have seen a very significant decline over the decades of kids that have walked to not walk. And I was asked why. So in some ways, I think you're kind of getting to a similar type question, which is, that's great, but if you're going to build it, will they come? Because sort of society-wide, we've seen one, kind of the general personal safety level go up. So to your point, may not even want my kid to be in the sidewalk, even if it's the most comfortable street in the world. That's just kind of the society we live in. We've seen an uptick, I think, in single vehicle, in the use of the automobile. Bus service has also been cut. It's become more expensive, so busing is not an option. So by default, falling into the car. A lot of it is just people are busy, right? Somehow our lives have gotten busier and we made harder decisions. I don't know exactly how to answer your question. My hope is that we will, through this process, in addition to doing simply transportation treatments, the goal is to try to change the context of the street. And again, this is part of the reason for thinking about some of the climate protection elements. Look, no guarantees that if you lot up shaded trees out there or build in some pedestrian plaza spaces, that everybody will jump out of a car. But over time, if you can show that it is more predictable from a vehicle space, and I'll give you an example, which is we had worked, and no means that this needs to be adopted here, but we had a 50-foot wide street in a school neighborhood that we reduced down to about 27 feet of vehicle space only. And the other remaining part of that below curb space was developed into a pedestrian plaza. We put in-street trees, and it really changed the context of the environment around the school. To this date, can I tell you how many people have, swapped out of their cars? Who knows? But we did find that before and after, people were lingering longer because they were given convening space in the right of way. So that is more my art rather than my science response to your question, but I think it's a very fair one, so.
Yeah, you gotta have coffee with all the soccer moms, you know?
Well, I think, can we put that into a VMT program? Coffee for parents so they will get out of cars, and I'll work with Chris on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. With a long straw. So but not plastic. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Thank you, though. Appreciate it, Steve.
Over here,
Yeah.
yeah, I got a question. Just to back you up a little bit on the scope. Just to
Yes.
be clear, you said the county and city of Healdsburg, is this excluding this Windsor, Santa Rosa? What the county means?
Countywide, incorporated and unincorporated. So we should be in a place where we'll have that rank order list of schools using the algorithm with the 7 indicators, again, before the end of the school year, and I want to make that list available. We are also a bit prepared to see where it falls out, and if there's an anomaly where all of Santa Rosa schools end up, filling up the top of the list, we may need to rethink another approach to the prioritization just so we can spread the wealth a little bit. But the first pass, we just want to see what the algorithm brings out. And those top 10 or 15 schools will be the ones that we engage starting next fall. And they will end up with an infrastructure improvement plan that we can then put into a grant application, should there not be funds locally to build out most of the treatments, which is probably unlikely.
Is there anything we can do to help in engaging our local school districts in this process?
But I am going to keep that as an open invitation to follow up with you. I have to say, the opportunity to meet with all 40 superintendents on March 7th, and then following up by emails, that all of them have been very responsive. So, again, it's all about expediency. It would have been very difficult to go cold calling to each of them. So I was very appreciative of the Office of Education allowing me to step in and meet. They call it the Leadership 40. And I'll open the door. In speaking with the CBPAC, there was an individual who has a school-centric water heater electrification program that is very cost-effective for schools. And he was like, actually it was through a different meeting, but I'm happy to provide the introduction. So if it's a great group to get to meet. So again, I'm happy to provide an introduction if that would be helpful. But I will keep my ears open for ideas. So thank you.
I'll take another run at Derek's question. Is there any additional funding or specific funding that we're looking at for Safe Routes to School projects?
I'm starting that funding source work right now. To date, the one that I'm most familiar with and probably have been most successful with is ATP. But again, I was coming from a location that was a highly disadvantaged community, so we tend to score quite well. And we were doing 20 to 30 to $40 million sized application requests. I think ATP, in the spirit of potentially bundling a series of schools, could get us a larger project that could be more competitive in ATP. I think it's just an unknown as to what sources. I trying to follow what's coming out of water.
So there's nothing specific.
No, and unfortunately, we're waiting. While this is a SS for a fiscal year 23 project, we have been awarded actually a school-centric quick build project for fiscal year 24, but we don't even know if we're gonna get that money, so.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. SCTCA local contributions for fiscal year 25-26. They've increased by 140%.
I believe Brenton Hare is online to help us answer any questions. Brenton, do you want to present or would you rather have me do it?
Go ahead, but just a quick note, it's the increase, the proposed increase is 3%.
Okay, it's close.
Yeah. Yes, but I'm here if there's any questions, but this item is not an action item. It's just a notification of the proposed local contributions increases that we'll be going to the board with during the May preliminary budget.
Does anyone have questions, assuming no one needs a presentation on that? All right, on to item 7.
Brendan,
Go ahead.
I just said thank you. He's done.
Oh, you're welcome.
I just had him here in case anybody had questions, so.
Yep.
Item 7.1, Measure M and Go Sonoma invoicing obligation status. Informational only. Anything to add?
No, sir. This is in your packet every month. Let me know if you have questions.
Okay, and if there are no questions, 7.2, Measure M, maintenance of effort reporting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The staff report that was included in your packet has been replaced. We did get some updated information, so the action that we are requesting from the TAC is different than what is in your packet. It was sent out electronically with the invitation. I think it was yesterday. And I think there are some hard copies if anybody wants to look at it. But Cloverdale has revised their reporting based on a misunderstanding. So everyone is currently showing within their baseline and in compliance with the maintenance of effort policy and with the Code of Public Utilities. So we are simply asking for the TAC to make a recommendation to forward this to the board.
Does anyone have comments or questions on that? Would anyone care to make a motion?
I make a motion.
Come on, people.
Second.
Thank you.
Second. Eric motion and Craig seconded.
Yep. Anyone opposed? No, that passes unanimously. Thank you for that. 7.3, Go Sonoma quarterly reporting.
Chair, so quarterly reporting was due on the 15th of the month. Everybody has submitted their quarterly reporting, and this is included in your agenda packet for your review to make sure that what we have here on the page is in fact what you submitted, that there aren't any mistakes before it gets forwarded to the board. Please get any comments that you may have on what is included to me by tomorrow. It shouldn't, it's a short turnaround, but that's because you guys wrote this. It shouldn't be a surprise. Everything should be as you submitted it. So please let us know if anything is out of the ordinary. As related to this though, I would like to ask, because everybody that has actually done the reporting is familiar that we are currently hosting this reporting on VSCE's website. On their SharePoint, you know that we work with Trinity Nguyen and that she has been hosting, that their server has been hosting where you actually do your uploading. SCTA is looking to take this over. In order to do this, our IT department tells us that we can only have a live link out there for 60 days which isn't even long enough to complete a quarter. If we were to host it ourselves, unless we actually give licenses to those that are going to access. It can't, a temporary access only lasts for 60 days and then the link expires. So what I would like to do is get one person from each jurisdiction who is responsible for the reporting and sign that person up for a license to access SCTA's SharePoint site. It would still work the exact same way. You would have a link. You would only have access to that portion of the SharePoint where your link takes you. And so no one else would be able to get in and change your information. But I need to have one person. I think I have identified pretty much who those people are that are completing the reporting. Santa Rosa, for example, doesn't have one currently because this is only for Go Sonoma, and Santa Rosa doesn't currently have Go Sonoma funding. Neither does Roanoke Park, but we will need, eventually everyone will have at least one, but for right now, I would like to identify at least one person. So if you have someone that you want to be your person, please let me know. Otherwise, I will probably select for you based on who has been completing the reporting. But let me know as soon as you can. That'd be great.
No questions?
I know that there are 2 different people at the county who do it. Great. So we'll talk.
Yeah, we'll have to figure something out for the county. Okay. That's why we're all here today.
That's right.
All right, thank you. Item number 8.1 is informational only, inactive federal obligation status. Does anyone have any comments, questions on that? Seeing none. You can speak if you want, Nader. You don't need to. All right, 8.2, federal at-risk funding tracking.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am pinch hitting for David, who is out on vacation today. As you know, we started collecting information on funding that was federal funding that was at risk. And it was subsequently, we were notified that MTC is now managing this, but we wanted to bring you the status of what we have so far and try to collect any further information that we can and get this to MTC. We will continue to track this ourselves also, but we want to make sure that everybody is aware that we are trying to track the at-risk funding. Yeah.
Is Safe Streets for All on that list of
Yes,
at risk? And no word, any word on, like, it was in their court to just approve it, right? Yeah, okay. Rhetorical question.
Yeah, it is. It's difficult because at the regional level and at the state level, federal employees are no longer even attending meetings. So it's very difficult to get information. No one wants to, there's one school of thought that says anecdotal information is better than no information at all. And then there's another school of thought that is, it's really just rumor. So why don't we don't speak for federal employees if they can't show up and speak for themselves. And it's not that they don't want to show up, it's that they can't. They're either being told not to, or they've been let go, or, there's just, it's very uncertain. So we are not getting a lot of information, but MTC is trying to coordinate this at a regional and federal level.
There hasn't been any word of anything actually being denied at this point. It's all just on hold, waiting for information.
I would agree with that assessment. I don't know that for certain. I know that, there's all sorts of things that are saying that things that have words that are concerning are being reconsidered, right? So I don't know what that means for our PED projects or our, greenhouse gas reduction projects or that sort of thing. Road diet project. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
And a little bit off topic, but how does that impact the upcoming SCTA call for projects where the categories are related to some of those things that are being looked at?
That's a good question that we haven't answered yet.
Okay.
we're gonna be bringing proposed scoring criteria next month, I think, to the TAC. So, you know, we'll have to come to some, I mean, we also have an obligation to comply with our countywide transportation plan and the regional transportation plan, which has these goals set up and approved. So we have obligations that we have to meet also. But at a federal level, I don't know what it means yet. We haven't really gotten direction on that. And so that is something that we will be discussing internally before we bring it to you next month.
That'll be an interesting conversation.
I had a question about formula federal funds versus non-formula. So like on the spreadsheet, Santa Rosa has a couple projects that are FTA and identified as formula. And so my impression was then that OBAG money, ATP, HIP, CMAC, all that stuff was not formula. But then I was in an MTC meeting recently where Georgia Gann said something along the lines of, oh, but OBAG's formula. So you should feel confident that OBAG's fine. So do we have clarity on that part? Like, is some of that money going to be fine and we don't need to be worried?
So by that formula is like California gets a certain number based on, you know, that's carved out at a federal level. But formula, once it gets to us, is obviously not allowed. So I believe you are correct, and that it could be, but we'll get more clarity on that tomorrow, because that's the Bay Area County Transportation Authority's executive directors meet tomorrow at their monthly meeting, and there will be a presentation by MTC on this topic. I hope to get clarity there, which I will then share with you.
Okay.
So just so I heard that, if I heard that correctly, OBEG money most likely is considered formula by the feds and most likely okay, but we don't know.
Correct.
Okay. Well, that's kind of good
Anecdotal.
news. Yeah. Well, that's better than probably not. So
There's not, please do review the list. Let us know if there's anything on here that is not on here that should be on here.
okay. We got a online Joanne.
I figured I'd pitch in since we have every flavor of money with every federal agency being held up with unexecuted grants. I can attest post-administration change that we have had an FTA formula grant, so 5307, executed and invoiced successfully. We have also had 2 OBAG grants that we had transferred to FTA, which in theory is obligation, that we have had no traction on yet. One of them has a NEPA clearance item that we have been trying for over a year to get FTA to advance. So that's definitely not happening right now. The regional offices lost 8 probationary staff. They had long been understaffed. So that's what's happening on the transit side with the region. The one thing I wanted, and we have an FRA grant too that has been so close to execution for so long. So I don't know what's going to happen with it next, because it has the word green in the title. We're green, by the way, if anyone asks. It's not about the climate, it's about the train color. But I will say the one thing that was troublesome that I wanted to report, because we also have our Safe Streets for All grant that has clearly been considered discretionary by FHWA. But we do have this one thing that's in the FTA's purview right now that is an earmark from prior years, a congressionally appropriated by name earmark that the FTA is considering discretionary at the moment. And I don't know if that's like just like a weird accounting or some kind of thing where they just don't have the staff to process. But last I checked, Congress appropriates. And it's in the budget from a couple of years ago by name. So it's just a weird moment where it was like, oh, you're considering that discretionary? There's no administrative decision-making element to that, which is how I perceive discretionary, is you create a grant program and you get to play with where the money goes. Congress appropriates you don't get to play with where the money goes. So just thought I'd throw that out there for the good of the order. We're working through that issue right now to see if it was just a slip of the tongue.
I vote that Joanne goes to Washington DC and starts talking to people.
Right?
I'm popular with the DC crowd.
I'm sure you are. All right, are we finished with that pleasant topic of federal at-risk funding?
Yes, sir.
So if you have anything, get it to Shauna. On to item 9, SCTCA board meeting scheduled for April 14th.
Yeah, so something a bit more exciting. The SCTCA board will meet on April 14. Items on the consent calendar include the meeting notes for March, an appropriation limits item, Go Sonoma project quarterly reporting review, a cooperative funding agreement for Petaluma for Go Sonoma, an appropriation request for Petaluma Transit, the State Route 12 and Fulton feasibility study report. On the regular calendar, the board will hear an item on the transit coordinated claim, a legislative update, an update on Bayren, the US 101 Marin Sonoma Narrows project and HOV hours of operations, and then finish off with the regular activities reports as per usual.
Great, thank you. No questions on that. Roundtable discussion. Anyone open any bids recently? And yeah.
Yeah, on the 18th, Katati opened a slurry seal pavement preservation project. It's the engineer's estimate was about 650,000. We got a low bid that was about 12% below the engineer's estimate, which was refreshing. The difference was in the HMA amount and the slurry seal. So the materials was about 60% of what we had thought it was going to be. Was the main difference. So
that's good news. Waiting to see if the LA fires or when that starts having an effect on things, but
Yeah, we saw the same effect. We just a couple of weeks ago opened our FDR and PPP program. Engineer's estimate was 18 million, and I think we had a nice cluster of bids between 16 and 14 million. And the real big number, which is different from last year, is the AC, right? So last year we were paying about 177 a ton. Hunter, remind me what we're around 145 or 150 a ton.
Yeah.
A little more normal, reasonable, if you consider that to be reasonable and normal, but way better than what we were doing the last couple of years. So that was good news. I think it's just a reflection of oil prices. Oh,
Right.
and I have one more announcement. There's been a promotion here at Sonoma County, and I'm happy to tell you about it. It was a very highly and rigorous competitive process. And in the end, Sally Urbanik won. I am retiring as of April 14th. And
wait a minute, she won or she lost?
well, I think she won. Well, you'll have to query her later as to whether or not that's a real fact or not. But she gets me for a lot more hours of the day now.
Congratulations, Steve.
Yeah, congratulations, Steve.
I was going to say I knew Shauna before she had kids, and when she used to work at Caltrans. So we've been around a long time, Shauna.
True enough, sir. Be
Yeah,
sorry to
so,
see you go.
Yeah, it'll be different without you.
It's well deserved though.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I've really enjoyed my time with you all, and it's been fun and messy, and that's what's fun about the SCTA and the SCTA CA now. Did I get that right?
ECA.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, it's the fun, messy stuff that I enjoy with y'all. So thank you very much for being my colleague and entertaining us all this long. So take care and do well and keep up the good work. And my
best
young
of luck on
apprentice
behalf
Hunter
of
will.
everyone here and in the past, Steve, wishing you the best.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else have news before Drew speaks? What else do we have?
I actually kind of don't want to go after that, but just on a more mundane level, you've probably all received an invitation from me about a transit-oriented communities workshop that's scheduled for April. So would encourage you or one of your staff to attend that. We'll have MTC there, and they're going to be rolling out the criteria that determines if you're compliant, how much you're compliant. So we'll be talking about that. And all the planners will also be on the workshop to talk about where each jurisdiction is at as far as meeting those criteria. So should be a good meeting. It's scheduled for April 17th from 9 until 10:30. So if you didn't get that and would like to attend, please let me know. And please forward it to other staff if you'd like them to participate as well. So thank you.
On that topic, do we know yet the next round of OBAG and DOC requirements? Has that been determined yet?
No.
No, okay.
So SCTA, is working on, as I mentioned, putting the criteria together. And we will be doing our call for projects in June, applications due in around August, but we don't expect to get OBAG criteria and all that until early next year. Somewhere around January. So we'll go through our process first because we've got STIP funds that have to be awarded or programmed. And so we will go through our process, program some of those early funding sources early in the latter end of this year, and then we will wait for OBAG criteria and so forth to come out next year.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mr. Chair, there is also a flyer in the packet that I wanted to draw your attention to. It was included. Adam, is this your item or the strategic transportation demand plan and the survey that we're doing? That's Dana? It's just included. It's in the agenda packet unless you wanted to say something else about it.
Great, thank you.
I took it. It was well written. It was a great survey.
Nobody has anything else? We will close with Drew.
So I was learning to drive when the Cotati grade widening was happening. So just to kind of give perspective where we were, I am leaving to MTC and my last day here is on the 4th, next Friday. I think Joanne's still there. So I just want to let the committee know kind of on an official capacity. Been here 8 years. And so I imagine a lot of your search bars have my name written in it. So just keep your eye out for a different name with meeting announcements. And that it really has been a pleasure to clerk this committee. You're running a great ship, Mr. Chair. And just, it has really been a great pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing at MTC.
I will be serving as the executive assistant to the executive director.
That's pretty cool. Congratulations. It's been great. You've done a fabulous job from my perspective.
That's what I'm hearing. Yeah, right.
We're all pretty devastated to lose Drew, but we're very happy for him. And
yeah,
this is a good move for him. So I wish him all the best. But
not easy.
He's going to leave a big hole.
And I'm certainly crying after every meeting and pretty much every day. So if you want to come down, if you really want to see me in tears, come next week. But I also know it's going to be a fun new adventure, and you know, I'm at home here, and so yeah.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Drew.
All right, with that, we're adjourned.